The Lamzu Maya is very small, but I've managed to have a lot of fun with it. Also, thank you Lamzu for sending it for review. The Maya weighs 45 grams and the balancing of that weight is perfect. It really does feel great in your hands. The buttons are a bit of a mixed bag though. The Maya has 1.0 switches which are made specifically for Lamzu, and I can normally tell without checking if a mouse is mechanical or optical because up until recently I'd sum it up by saying mechanical switches feel nice and crispy and optical switches feel a bit hollow and dull by comparison. So I couldn't actually tell if the Maya was optical or mechanical when I got it out of the box, because it feels like a bit of a dull mechanical implementation when compared to something like my Vaxi mice. And as I've already said, the Maya just feels a little bit heavier and a little bit less tactile. What I would say though is if you're only using one mouse, the Maya's clicks will feel fine to you. I just notice it because I use lots of different mice on a regular basis. The scroll wheel on the Maya also feels fine too. You know, the actual function of the wheel feels great. My only issue with the scroll wheel is this rubber band they've wrapped around it. It is quite squishy. You can kind of feel there's a bit of give in that scroll wheel, and it is not a deal breaker, but now that I've noticed it, I can't unnotice it, and it does not add to the experience, it detracts from the experience. So I'd like to see them remove that in the next iteration of the Maya, just make that a solid band going round rather than it having like an air pocket in between the plastic of the wheel and the rubber of the wheel. The side buttons on the Maya actually feel pretty great. You know, they stick out a fair chunk, they're a good size, they're in a good position. I don't have any concerns or complaints about the side buttons. Overall, the buttons on the Maya are acceptable. In terms of the shape of the Maya, I don't know what people talking about this mouse online have been smoking, but it doesn't remind me at all of the Superlight. The Superlight is very uninspiring by comparison, and the Maya has a lot more going for it in its shape. In my opinion, it feels a lot more like a shorter and stumpier Endgame Gear OP1. You know, it's a bit wider than the OP1 in the front end, and the button height is a bit taller too. The comfort grooves on the Maya are pretty slow and steady. They look exaggerated to the eye, but in the hand, they aren't really all that noticeable, at least to me. Maybe my hands are just too big to really benefit from them, given that this is quite a small mouse overall. So due to the fact that the Maya is quite a small mouse, I am forced to fingertip grip it. And it's been working really nicely for me in fingertip grip, although I've taken a fairly unconventional approach to my grip with this mouse. So I've relied quite heavily on the button bumper for my ring finger. So I kind of rest my ring finger almost on the top of that button bumper, and I really appreciate that for my grip on this mouse. It seems to have worked really well for me, and I have a lot of control over the mouse in this grip. So my second approach to gripping the Maya is to grab it from the front end before the comfort grooves kick in. And I use the semi-straight edges of the Maya as nice resting points for my fingers to make contact with. And in both of these grips, I can rest a knuckle on the top of the hump if I want to, because it has a somewhat medium-sized hump, and it's nice for that edge stability in those crazy gaming moments. And I can either rest these two knuckles on the top of the hump, or I can rest my little pinky knuckle on the back of the Lamzu Maya. Both of those are sort of adaptable grip changes I can make in-game depending on what sort of movements I'm making. I've also made good use of the Clawmate mouse modification on the Maya because it's a small mouse and I have large hands, and these modifications just help me to keep my fingers locked in on a small form factor. It helps me to take the stress out of my grip too, and it really locks the mouse in with a ton of added stability, and it doesn't detract from the mouse shape at all. There's links to the Clawmate down below if you're interested. The TLDR for the Clawmate is that it's my favourite mouse modification. The coating on the Maya is really nice, to be fair. It's the same as on my Thorn, and I liked that one too. Pretty nice and chalky, and it works really well. Overall, I think the Maya is a great product for people with size appropriate hands, and that's the key thing here. For me though, I can only really fingertip grip it, and I have other mice that I prefer to use for that grip at the moment. I'd probably rather pick up the Endgame Gear OP1WE or the Zowie U2 for fingertip grip right now. That's not to say the Maya won't be a great option for you though, and it is a really nice product overall, particularly for the price. So let me know what you think about the Maya. I've been Log, you've been you, stay breezy, peace.